I am Dr. Renu Thakur, Chairperson of the Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Today we will do the 8th module, Tanjore paintings. Tanjore or Thanjavur paintings belong to the period of the Chols. These wonderful paintings all around the temple add beauty to the monument. The major paintings are done at Nartamalai and Malyadipattai. This module will specifically deal with the Brideshwar temple. Tanjore was an epicenter of art and architecture of the Chol painters. Later on, this tradition was carried on by the Nayaks. The artists of this period gave an additional worth to the wall paintings. The murals have been planned and painted with great ecstasy on a wider scale. The depiction of divinity and the dancers with musicians show variety of themes. The Chols are mentioned in the rock edict of Mauryan king Ashok, but as the rulers of Tondai Mandalam, they are first mentioned only in the 1st century BC. Tanjore is located in the rich delta of river Kaveri between Tiruchirappalli and Kumbakonam, and which was once the epicenter of economic and cultural activities. In the second half of the 9th century, the power of Pallavs declined rapidly and their place was taken up by the Chols, who dominated and ruled the area to the south of Tungabhadra until the early 13th century. The dynasty was founded by Vijayalya, who captured Tanjore sometime before 850 AD. His successor Aditya I came to the throne about 871 AD. He supported the Pallavs against the Pandyas in the disastrous defeat of the latter at Shripurambiam in 880 AD. He then invaded Todai Mandalam and killed Aprajit, the last of the Pallav kings. By the end of the 19th century, the Chol Empire bordered the Rashtrakuts and Aditya was succeeded by his son Parantak I. In 907 AD, Parantak completed the conquest of the Pandyan country and was first successful against the Rashtrakuts and was also successful against the invading Rashtrakuts. In 949, however, at the Battle of Takulam, the Chol army was decisively defeated when Parantak died in 955 AD. The Rashtrakuts were in total control of Tondai Mandalam and the Chol Empire had shrunk to its original frontiers. This period is one of the most remarkable periods of creative energy in the history of Indian art. With the accession of Rajaraja I in 985, Chols became the paramount power in South India. The splendid reign of Rajaraj culminated into huge Shiv temple, the Raja Rajeshwar temple, also known as Brideshwar temple at Tanjore, which was completed around 1010 AD. This temple is the finest expression of classical Indian genius. The base of the great 200 feet high tower, Viman, encloses the central shrine, which is surrounded by 9 feet wide circumambulatory passage or Pradakshina Path, lit by 3 open niches in the center of the external walls. Pilasters corresponding to the articulation of the outer divides the passage into 15 chambers. The 3 chambers which face the openings in the outer wall contain large sculptural representation of the appropriate deities. The others are covered with wall paintings. In 6 of the chambers, the paintings belong to 17th and 18th centuries. On remaining, the late paintings have broken away in places to reveal an earlier layer, undoubtedly an original part of the decoration of Rajeshwar temple. The paintings are hidden under the tower in a dark passage around the main shrine. Now we will discuss the paintings. The contemporary classics describe the glory of the paintings in South, referring Chitramandap, Chitrashalas, Ovi in temples and palaces. The Paripaddal mentions the painting on temple walls in the early Chol capital named Kaveripattanam. The actual remains are yet to be discovered. The discovery of the paintings by S.K. Govindswamy in the dark circumambulatory passage around the central shrine in the Brideshwar temple Tanjore reveal a new phase of South Indian paintings. There is a regular gallery of pictures of early Chol art. There are two layers, one of the Nayak period on top, and wherever it has been scratched off reveals an early Chol layer richly laden with paintings. The entire wall was decorated with paintings of the time of Raja Raj. But later on, renovations and additions were made during the centuries which give account for additional layers that have covered up the earlier paintings. The Chol paintings so far exposed are mainly on the western and northern walls of the temple. Now we will talk about the paintings which are depicted on the walls of the temple. So, painting 1, depiction of Shiv. The entire wall space of the western side of the temple consists of a huge panel with Shiv depicted as Yog Dakshin Murti, and there is a figure of Nataraj. The figure depicted as Shiv is seated on the tiger skin in a yoga pose with the yogapath across his waist and right knee calmly watching the dance of two apsaras. The picture of Shiv shows great peaceful dignity and is beautifully portrayed. A very big panel of Shiv, Tirupantak, shows him standing in a chariot, his 8 arms carrying different weapons, a commanding figure, taut with tension and pulsating with power. On the other side are fully armed guns fighting the son of Taraksura, the demon king against whom Indra, the king of heaven, had failed. On the second wall are the scenes showing dancers and musicians. Dwarf Gan and Vishnu play the drum, the hand drum and the cymbals as they fly in the air to approach this grand spectacle, which is witnessed by few figures seated in the foreground. Below, the Sundar and Cheraman are shown hurrying on a horse and on an elephant respectively. In order to understand the subject matter of the painting, there is need to recall the story of Saint Sundar. He was a Brahmin boy brought up by a local chief. When he came of age, his marriage was arranged, but in the middle of the ceremony, an old Brahmin, bent with age, intruded and claimed that Sundar was his slave. The claim is fought out in the court and established. The court assembly becomes curious about the identity of old Brahmin, who takes them to the local Shiv temple and vanished into the shrine. It is then that Sundar realizes that he has been elected as the servant of Shiv. After composing numerous hymns and celebrating the boundless grace of Shiv, Sundar leaves the mortal world and departs to Kailash on a white elephant descended from heaven. When the news reached his friend, King Cheraman Perumal, he too mounts a white horse and reaches Kailash even before Sundar could reach. Both the scenes, the court scene and the final departure, have survived in these paintings. The dancers and musicians have a very slender body with peculiar figure lines and beautiful postures of a particular dance form. The artists have given a lot of concentration to the ornamentation of the figures. Various types of ornaments which are visible are jewels on forehead, anklet on foot, armlets and neck pieces. The joyous eyes, curly hair, beautiful teeth and rounded breast have been beautifully portrayed. Now we will look at the depiction of Vishnu and celestial musicians. The picture of Vishnu again of Mahapurush and other figures show the grace of the lines that indicate the movement of the limbs. One of them has cymbals in his hands and plays it well. The long row of celestial musicians playing different instruments in significant mudras indicate the graceful manipulation of fingers and the twist of the neck. Or the roll of the eyes as they glance from one side to the other. It is an eloquent proof of the painter's skill. Now we will look into the celestial faces, how the faces have been depicted in these paintings. The walls opposite the northern one show 5 heads peeping out of partially exposed layer of chol paintings. The long and lustrous eyes, the elevated nose in perfect relief, the sweet and graceful lips, the lovely chin and cheeks, the arched brows and ringlets of hair, the beautiful curved ears, and the singularly attractive neck are examples of typical beauty represented by the artist. Depiction of Chol king Rajaraj with his guru is again beautifully painted. There are attendants who are possibly the Chol warriors adorned with a similar kind of uniform and holding a stick which is possibly a weapon. Tanjore paintings have been done on the prepared surface of soft lime plaster. Powdered conch shell seems to have been used to give it gleaming whiteness. Tentative outlines are drawn first and then filled with flat layers of color for flesh and drapery. The final details are undertaken with a delicate brush. The colors used for paintings are mainly yellow, ochre, red ochre, black and brown earth, terre and the blues of lapis lazuli. The other set of paintings, temperas with glue as the binding medium, was completed during the rule of Nayak emperors in the 16th century. It is not clear why the Nayaks chose to use Chol paintings as the surface for their temperas. While the Chol paintings are soft, pastel and have clear colors, the Nayak paintings seem to be dark and garish in comparison. In addition to these two forms, there is another form of painting called the Maratha paintings on the exterior of the temple, more so in the Nandi Mandapam or the place of the vehicle of Lord Shiva. The paintings are antique and are preserved, but the color scheme and the artistry seem to be very dark, garish and unrefined. The Chol paintings lay beneath the Nayak exterior for 4 centuries. Well-known historian and archaeologist Professor K.V. Govindaswamy spotted the Chol murals by chance in 1935 because the Nike layer had peeled off in the few places. The Chol paintings lay beneath the Nayak exterior for 4 centuries. Well-known historian and archaeologist Professor K.V. Govind Swami spotted the Chol murals by chance in 1935 because the Nayak layer had peeled off in a few places. Archaeological chemist Dr. S. Paramashivam began chipping off the superimposed Nike paintings. In their zeal to uncover the older paintings, they lost quite a few temperas. Then it dawned on them that the Nike paintings are also valuable in their own way and should not be destroyed for the sake of exposing the Chol works, advised I. Mahadevan, historian and Indologist. In the early Strepo method, only the pigment of the Nike painting was removed and so the stripped painting got destroyed. The alternative method was devised and modified and it was called Distaco method, removing the base of the superimposed painting as well so that there is a possibility of keeping it intact. S. Subramaniam, the then Hyderabad-based superintending archaeological chemist of the Archaeological Survey of India for the southern region, was the first to start the stripping of the paintings. This was followed by Shri Veera Raghavan, Shri G. Ramachandran and Shri B. R. Mukherjee, Shri Chandra Pandyan and host of other personnel. Till date, about 80% of the layers have been separated. The detachment of one layer of painting from another is infinitely more difficult than the detachment of a single layer of painting from the wall surface. The method involves fixing 2 layers of cloth, a fine cloth and a cotton canvas to the Nike painting with synthetic adhesive polyvinyl acetate dissolved in toluene. When the cloth dries up, careful incisions are made on the edges of the Nike painting and using a rubber-tipped wooden mallet, the superimposed painting is removed. Then 2 layers of strong canvas, a layer of polyurethane foam and fiberglass panels are applied to the back of the peeled off Nike painting. This process is termed as mounting. The cloth is removed by solvents, the panel is overturned and a framed and mounted Nike painting on a new frame is kept on display in the Interpretation Center at the precinct of the temple for general public view. Of the 15 chambers in the passage around the Sanctum Sanctorum, many of the superimposed Nike paintings have been separated from the underlying Chol paintings which have been exposed. This process of stripping of the paintings, which has natural pigments, has been very much appreciated by many scientists all over the world. The Naiks are originally military governors under the supervision of Vijayanagar Empire. They declared themselves independent rulers after the disaster of Talikot in 1565. The royal house of Vijayanagar shifted to Penukonda, then to Chandagiri and further on to Chengalpet. There were different chieftains who established autonomy as the Naiks of Madurai and the Naiks of Tanjore. The 17th century is the period of Naik paintings, which are preserved in many temples of the region. The churning of the ocean of milk is the main theme of the most important panel in the upper layer of the Brideshwar temple at Tanjore. The wealth of Naik painting particularly lies in the glimpse of life provided by them. The elaboration of costumes, ornamentation and other details can be easily gathered from this important series of paintings. In the temple at Tanjore, a long panel facing west in the circumambulatory passage shows Indra on an elephant, Agni on ram and Yam on buffalo, Nriti on human mount, Varun on makar and Marut on a deer. The Amrit Manthan scene appropriately presents the rose out of the ocean when it was churned. On the adjacent south wall is a long Amrit Manthan scene exhibiting the Devs on one side and Asurs on the other, holding the hoods and tails of Vasuki and the great tortoise holding the Mount Mandra. The wall facing north shows how Vishnu gathered lotuses from a tank to worship Shiv. He offered 1,000 flowers a day, and when he failed to get one, he made up the offering of his own eye and thereby won the blessing from Shiv as Vishnu Manu Grahamurti. The stylized form of the tank with trees in the vicinity is characteristic of this mode of representation. Now we will look into the technique of Tanjore painting. Of the numerous steps involved in the making of a Tanjore painting is the drawing of a preliminary sketch of the image on the base. The base was made up of cloth which is further pasted over a wooden base. The second step consisted of mixing chalk powder or zinc oxide with water soluble adhesive and applying it on the base. Thereafter, the drawing was made and ornamented with cut glass, pearls, and even semi precious stones, which are depicted in the later Tanjore paintings. All the paintings are done using the bright colors which distinguish them from the other paintings. Even the earlier paintings do not show these features. The use of laces or threads further added grace to the paintings. These features are not seen in the earlier paintings. The figures mostly have rounded face and streamlined body. The figures are placed within arcs, curtains, and borders. These need to be preserved by framing them. The artists are trying to promote this old form of painting by combining it with modern techniques and recreating them on different mediums. Thus, the theme, style, and aesthetics continue to inspire many contemporary artists.